I'm a police officer, show yourselves.
If you want us, why don't you come and get us?
Don't be so bloody stupid.
Come on, son, game's up.
Get back, cobber.
Give that thing to me.
Let him have it, Chris!
Good morning everyone, how you doing? It's Paul here from Unusual Things. Now this morning we are in Croydon Cemetery and Crematorium, and we have come to find the final resting place of Derek William Bentley. Now some of you may be thinking, who's that? But this is one for the crime files, okay? And the reason is, it's one of the biggest miscarriages of justice thought to have happened in the British system in 1953, where 19-year-old Derek William Bentley was hanged. And I will tell you a little bit more about that real soon. But eventually, the British government and the judicial system come to the conclusion that he shouldn't have been hanged, okay? Lots of things to take into consideration with this whole case. The fact that he had an IQ of 66 due to a bomb that went off over his house during the war. So I'll tell you a little bit more about him real soon. But it's a real interesting case. Now, there is a film about it, and I saw it years ago, and I can't remember if the film is actually called Let Him Have It, or it's got another title. If I look it up and I remember when I'm editing this, I will put it on the screen for you, but it's definitely worth checking out. Now, it is quite a long lot of information regarding this case, so as usual I'll just skip over it, and if you want to go and look into the details you can, then by all means do so, because it's really interesting, especially those of you out there that love the crime files and you love looking into your true crime sorts of cases. Very windy here today, so I'm hoping the microphone's picking me up okay. I'll turn my back to it. We'll get on. I'll tell you, look at the beautiful how the leaves go though. I love this time of year. I'll tell you a little bit more about Derek Bentley real soon. Don't forget, if you like the video today, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free. And of course, leave your comments down below. Have you seen the film? Can you remember what it's called? Because I can't at this moment in time. It might even be called Let Him Have It. Okay, I don't know. But now I'll tell you a little bit more information about him, and then we'll go and the case, and we'll go and look for his final resting place and pay our respects then. Okay.
Derek William Bentley, the 30th of June 1933 to the 28th of January 1953, was a British man who was hanged for the murder of a policeman during a burglary attempt. Christopher Craig, then aged 16, a friend and accomplice of Bentley, was accused of the murder. Bentley was convicted as a party to the crime under the English law principle of joint enterprise, as the burglary had been committed in mutual understanding and bringing deadly weapons. The outcome of the trial and Home Secretary David Maxwell Fyfe's failure to grant clemency to Bentley were highly controversial. The jury at the trial found Bentley guilty based in large part on the prosecution's interpretation of the ambiguous phrase, "let him have it." Bentley's alleged exhortation to Craig, which prosecutors argued was an order to shoot, and defence counsel argued was an order to surrender. This after Lord Chief Justice Goddard had described Bentley as mentally aiding the murder. Goddard sentenced Bentley to be hanged, despite a recommendation for mercy by the jury under the Judgment of Death Act 1823. No other sentence was possible. Subsequently to the Homicide Act 1957, which introduced stronger diminished responsibility safeguards, was all but certainly influenced by the Bentley trial. The Bentley case became a cause célèbre and led to a 40-year-long campaign to win Bentley a posthumous pardon, which was granted in 1993, and then further campaign for the quashing of his murder conviction, which occurred in 1998. Bentley's case is thus considered a case of miscarriage of justice alongside that of Timothy Evans, and pivotal in the successful campaign to abolish capital punishment in the United Kingdom. Bentley had a series of health problems. His parents reported that in a childhood accident he had broken his nose, and since then he had 3 seizure fits, including one which they said he nearly died of choking. The family also said they were bombed out 3 times during the Second World War, and in one of these incidents, the house in which he lived collapsed around him. But a court did not find any indication that he was physically injured in the incident. However, Bentley was later seen to have epilepsy. He was sent to Kingswood Training School, Bristol, on the 27th of October 1948. There he was administered diagnostic tests which eventually determined, when he was 15 and a half years old, that his mental age was estimated at 10 years, 4 months. While he had a score of 66 on an IQ test, Kingswood staff reported Bentley to be lazy, indifferent, voluble, and of the wise guy type, whilst the court described him as indifferent, smug, self-satisfied, and ready to tell tales. After the arrest in 1952, further IQ tests were administered to him at Brixton Prison. He was described there as borderline feeble-minded, with a verbal score of 71, a performance IQ of 87, and a full-scale IQ of 77. Bentley was discovered to still be quite illiterate at the time of his arrest in November 1952. The prison medical officer said he cannot even recognise or write down all the letters of the alphabet. Bentley was examined twice by a EEG. A reading on the 16th of November 1949 indicated he was an epileptic, and a reading on the 9th of February 1950 was abnormal. Both were taken at the Burden Neurological Institute in Bristol. Bentley was released from Kingswood School on the 28th of July 1950, a year early, though he was told that he would remain under the care of Kingswood until the 29th of November 1954, by which time he was dead. He was a recluse for the rest of 1950, rarely venturing out of the house, breaking his isolation in January 1951. In March 1951, he was employed by a furniture removal firm, but was forced to leave the job after injuring his back in March 1952. In May 1952, Bentley was taken on by the Croydon Corporation as a dustbin man. 1 month later, in June 1952, he was demoted to street sweeping for unsatisfactory performance. 1 month after that, he was sacked by the corporation. He was still unemployed at the time of his arrest in November 1952. On the night of Sunday, the 2nd of November 1952, Bentley and a 16-year-old companion, Christopher Craig, attempted to burgle the warehouse of the Barlow and Parker Confectionery Company at Tamworth Road, Croydon. Craig armed himself with a Colt New Service .455 Webley caliber revolver, the barrel of which he had shortened so that it could be carried easily in his pocket. He also carried a number of undersized rounds for the revolver, some of which he had modified by hand to fit the gun. Bentley carried a knuckle duster which he had been given by Craig, who had been fined the previous year for possessing a firearm without a certificate. At around 9:15 p.m, neighbours called police after spotting Craig and Bentley climbing over the gate and up a drain pipe to the roof of the warehouse. When police arrived, Craig and Bentley hid behind the lift housing. Craig taunted the police. One of the officers, Detective Constable Frederick Fairfax, climbed the drain pipe to the roof and grabbed hold of Bentley, but Bentley broke free. What happened then is uncertain. Police witnesses later claimed that Fairfax ordered Craig to hand over the gun, lad, and Bentley shouted, "Let him have it, Chris." Craig fired, striking Fairfax in the shoulder. Fairfax was nonetheless again able to restrain Bentley, who told Fairfax that Craig had further ammunition for the gun. Bentley had not used either of the weapons in his pockets. A group of uniformed police officers arrived and were sent onto the roof. The first to reach the roof was Police Constable Sidney Miles, who was immediately killed by a shot to the head. After exhausting his ammunition and being cornered, Craig jumped 30 feet, 10 metres from the roof onto a greenhouse, fracturing his spine and left wrist, and had to remain in hospital. Both Craig and Bentley were charged with murder of PC Miles the following day. the 3rd of November 1952. They were tried by jury before the Lord Chief Justice, Lord Goddard, at the Old Bailey in London between the 9th of December and the 11th of December 1952. Christmas Humphreys, Senior Treasury Counsel, led for the prosecution. At the time of the burglary attempt and Miles's death, murder was a capital offence in England and Wales. Minors under 18 were not sentenced to death. Consequently, of the two defendants, despite Craig having fired the fatal shot, only Bentley faced the death penalty if convicted. The doctoring of felony, murder, or constructive malice meant that a charge of manslaughter was not an option, as the malicious intent of the armed robbery was transferred to the shooting. Bentley's best defence was that he effectively under arrest when Miles was killed. There were three principal points of contention at trial. Firstly, the defence claimed that there was ambiguity in the evidence as to how many shots were fired and by whom. A later forensic ballistics expert cast doubt on whether Craig could have hit Miles if he had shot at him deliberately. The fatal bullet was not found. Craig had used bullets of different undersized calibers, and the sawn-off barrel made it inaccurate to a degree of 6 feet at the range from which he had fired. Secondly, there was controversy over the existence and meaning of Bentley's alleged instruction to Craig. "Let him have it, Chris." Craig and Bentley denied that Bentley had said the words, while the police officer testified that he had said them. Further, Bentley's counsel argued that even if he had said the words, it could not be proven that Bentley had intended the words to mean the informal meaning of "shoot him, Chris," instead of the literal meaning of "give him the gun, Chris." Thirdly, there was disagreement over whether Bentley was fit to stand trial in light of his mental capacity. The principal medical officer responsible was Dr. Matheson, and he referred Bentley to Dr. Hill, a psychiatrist at the Maudsley Hospital. Hill's report stated that Bentley was illiterate and of low intelligence, what we would describe as having learning difficulties. However, Matheson was of the opinion that whilst agreeing that Bentley was of low intelligence, he did not have epilepsy at the time of the alleged offence, and he was not a feeble-minded person under the Mental Deficiency Acts. Matheson said that he was sane and fit to plead and stand trial. English law at the time did not recognise the concept of diminished responsibility due to retarded development. Though it existed in Scottish law, it was introduced to England by the Homicide Act in 1957. Criminal insanity, where the accused is unable to distinguish right from wrong, was then the only medical defence to murder. Bentley, while he had severe debilitation, was not insane. The judge took 75 minutes to decide that both Craig and Bentley were guilty of Miles's murder. With a plea for mercy from Bentley, Bentley was sentenced to death, whilst Craig was ordered to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure. He was eventually released in May 1963 after serving 10 years imprisonment. Married 2 years later and subsequently became a plumber. Bentley was originally scheduled to be hanged on the 30th of December 1952, but this was postponed to allow for an appeal. Bentley's lawyers filed appeals highlighting the ambiguities of the ballistic evidence, Bentley's mental age, and the fact that he did not fire the fatal shot. Bentley's appeal was heard on the 13th of January 1953, but was unsuccessful. Decision not to reprieve Bentley. When his appeal was turned down, Bentley's life was placed in the hands of the Home Secretary, David Maxwell Fyfe, who had to decide whether to recommend that the Queen exercise the royal prerogative of mercy to commute his death sentence to a life imprisonment. Lord Goddard forwarded the jury's recommendation of mercy, but added he himself could not find any mitigating circumstances. His later statements to author David Yallop, which convinced Yallop that Goddard had wanted a reprieve, appear to have been incorrectly quoted. Maxwell Fyfe's autobiography, published in 1964, refers to the factors which he took into consideration: the evidence of the trial, medical reports, family or other private circumstances, and police reports, the available precedents, and public opinion. He went on to say that Bentley's case also involved the issue of police force, since it was a police officer who was killed. Maxwell Fyfe then stresses that a reprieve would mean the Home Secretary is intervening in the due process of the law. Maxwell Fyfe, in the words of the letter sent out, failed to discover any sufficient ground to justify him in advising Her Majesty to interfere with the due course of the law. There was much political pressure to commute Bentley's sentence, including a memorandum signed by over 200 members of Parliament. Despite several attempts, Parliament was given no opportunity to debate the issue until the sentence had been carried out. The Home Office also refused Dr. Hill permission to make his report public. At 9 a.m. on the 28th of January 1953, Bentley was hanged at Wandsworth Prison, London, by Albert Pierpoint, with Harry Allen assisting. There was protests outside the prison and 2 people were arrested and fined for damage to property. In March 1966, Bentley's remains were removed from Wandsworth and reinterred into Croydon Cemetery.
So there's all the information there on Derek William Bentley, and like I say, to be hanged at the age of 19 years old with such unsure circumstances, really, you know, an IQ of 66, having that bomb dropped on the house during the war, you know, epilepsy, seizures, so much uncertainty. And it's weird because this day and age you hear people say, oh, hang them, you know, as soon as a crime's committed, which, okay, is fair enough, but these days we have better chances with evidence, you know, with DNA and things like that. Back then it was really limited, and for them just to, you know, the other guy got away with it, and for Derek to be hung at the age of 19, it's just no age at all. Anyway, been having a good look around, and you know what? I think I found it. And of course, Derek is over here behind this little bushes here. Here lies Derek William Bentley, a victim of the British Justice, 30th of June 1933 to 28th of January 1953, aged 19 years, much loved son and brother. Obviously I can't quite read that, but oh, the truth will out, Iris Bentley. So I know his sister fought so hard for him. In love and memory of William George Bentley, devoted husband and father, born 3rd of May 1905, fell asleep 12th of July 1974. Lillian Rose Bentley, a loving wife and mother, born 8th November 1903, fell asleep 10th October 1976. Albert Edwin Bentley, born 25th March 1910, fell asleep 14th March 1993. They fought to the end. Wow. Ah. It's so sad, and I do feel so sorry for Derek. He might not have always been living the cleanest of life, something that wasn't his fault really, and ultimately has been recognised now by the British government and everyone there. So just want to say, bless you, Derek, and let's hope that no more miscarriages of justice along those lines ever get to that level, because, you know, an innocent young boy, which he was back then, 19 years old, was hanged for something A, he didn't do, and B, because of the words he said basically, and because of his age, because the other lad couldn't, you know. So it shows how harsh things were back then, doesn't it? And that's only, what, 70 years ago? So not long at all, really. But anyway, Derek William Bentley, one for the crime files there. A definite miscarriage of justice, in my mind. Let me know your thoughts. Please leave your comments down below. Of course, if you liked the video today, give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you all on the next one. Take it easy.